Okay, we're going to teach you how to make a raw sabzi. And so you may think raw food, we don't use rice. We do use rice. The one rice that we use is black rice. It's a rice that can be sprouted. This is what it looks like. It grows wild, and so it's inherently organic because no pesticides are sprayed on it. Now sometimes it's called forbidden rice, and in the Asian supermarkets you do have to be careful because a lot of times they'll say black wild rice, but they've cultivated it, they've crossed it with another type of rice, and they grow it in the rice paddies and apply pesticides. So you want truly black wild rice. This is what it looks like. Now what we did is you use a lot more water in sprouted black wild rice than you do in traditional cooked rice. If you don't want to make black wild rice, then we do suggest that you go ahead and just cook brown rice. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to use tap water, and you want to use water that's fairly warm, and you want to put, in this we put 6 cups of rice. So this is what it looks like after. This is what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like after. And you'll notice that it's sprouted because the different tendrils, some of them curl, some of them go straight, they do all kinds of different things. But when you lift up a handful of it, it should all have split or sprouted. Okay? If you haven't left it long enough, then you'll see that some has split or sprouted and some is still straight. So you can get a lot more rice. I'll show you what 6 cups of rice will make. What I suggest is if you don't have a dehydrator, then you set your oven to 150, which tends to be the lowest heat, or 175, and just wedge it open with something, with a tea towel or something, so that there's a little bit of a breeze that goes back and forth into it. And you notice that with my rice, I covered it after. So I covered it with a plastic lid. Obviously it wasn't that hot because the plastic didn't melt, right? We're not after high heat. We're just after a nice warm environment, and then you have rice. The rice is going to taste fairly plain, and we don't want it to taste spicy, but we do want to add just some salt to it. To as much as I have, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons because I've got a lot. On yours, start off with like a 1/4 teaspoon or a 1/2 teaspoon. You don't want too much. And we're going to blend it in together. And that's because we don't want the vegetables we put on top of it to have all the flavor. We just want our rice to taste plain, but it should have a touch of salt on it so it doesn't taste yucky. You know. There we go. Now our rice is done. For the next step, is our vegetables. And you may wonder, well, what vegetables can I use to make sabzis or anything? Well, the seasons change, so you can pretty much use any vegetables that you want. Thank you. This is a Romanesca, which is a type of a cauliflower. And so Indians love making cauliflower and potatoes. We call it aloo gobi. I'm using a green Romanesca today. And what we always do is we cut a square. So 1, 2, 3. On a cauliflower it works much better, and you take out the core. On Romanesca it tends not to have as thick a core in it as it is. Now because we're doing this in a raw version, do you have one empty bowl there? You don't want to use too much of the stalk, so you'll see that I'm starting to cut away the stalk. So I'll cut it off like that. You want to cut it just at the top there. There you go. That would be an easy way of doing it. So you come across, just cut off the stalks, everything else should fall off, and you break it off like that. Just into small bite-sized pieces. Now for your actual greens today, we have beautiful red chard. We also have green chard. We have Napa cabbage. You could use something like romaine lettuce, and these are a mustard. So here it is. We are going to be eating this raw. Same rule applies. If there's a hard stalk, remove it. We do not want hard stalks in our food. They don't taste good in raw food. So break off the leaves, remove the stalk. After you've done that, then we usually bunch it all together like this and cut it. Usually I cut it in 2 different directions. So I ribbon it in the one direction, and you'll feel as you're cutting it if there's more stalks, and you'll just remove them. There we go. So I usually ribbon it in the one direction, and then I turn the whole pile and I ribbon it again in the other direction. Okay, and then I add those to my bowl. And they're just small pieces, like that. Very pretty. Okay, the next one, on the chard, we strip it. So you hold up the piece of chard, depending on which way you pull up, and you remove the stalk. So anybody who's having problems digesting greens, it's typically the stalks that you're going to have a problem with. We remove those stalks. So that's that one head of that. And this is our green chard. Again, for color's sake, we've got two different kinds of greens. We don't have that many people here. We could just skip this one. Go with the red chard here. But the same thing, you would just pull it off the stalk. And these tips are really important. You might think, well, it really doesn't matter. It does. It makes a whole big difference to how it tastes in the end, and it makes a huge difference to how your body digests it. Same thing with the bok choy. I cut up about here so that you've got the hardest, toughest parts gone. Okay? These small little pieces of stalk, they're no problem. Go ahead and ribbon them very small. And that is the key. You want them to be very, very small. And so again, we ribbon this way. And then we turn the whole thing over. And we ribbon the other way. So what we do is we take lemon juice, which Kaylee got for me. And you just go ahead and put a little tiny bit over it. There you go. And then a little bit of salt. Now, why are we doing lemon juice and salt? Because the acid in the lemon juice starts to cook your vegetables. Okay, so now we're going to massage them. And when I say massage, I really do mean deep tissue massage. We're going to grab them like this, and we're going to squeeze in our hands, and we're going to release. So I do that over and over again, and that looks absolutely cooked. And doesn't it smell absolutely cooked like when you do Chinese green? So that's that. Now, what do we do with all Indian vegetables? We have a basic sauce that we make with all Indian cooked vegetables. We saute onions with garlic, tomatoes, and we add seasonings. That's what we do. So we're going with 6 cups of cashews. In this dish, because I'm after a true Indian dish, I'm going to use powdered white onion. So we're going to add 1 teaspoon, heaping teaspoon of onion to this mix. We're also going to add garlic, and we're going to do that fresh. Now, my next favorite part, tomatoes. I mean, I'm a true Indian. I love Indian food. Absolutely adore it. So we need some kind of a liquid. You notice we had to do that when we ground our other nuts, right? So the liquid is going to come from our tomato. Same thing, we kind of coarsely chop it. In our typical sabzis, we would use 2 tomatoes to make this much sauce. I'm going to use exact same portions. I take out the stem because it's not flavorful. Okay, at this point, before we get too far into it, I'm going to also bring out the spices that we use. In Indian food, we use garam masala. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add 1 heaping teaspoon of garam masala. We are going to add 1 heaping teaspoon of turmeric. Turmeric, by the way, is a superfood. Absolutely phenomenal. And we forgot the ginger. Love, it's back there. In this instance, I sometimes make my own ginger juice, which is absolutely phenomenal. But in a food processor, ginger does not juice. If you have a Vitamix, go ahead. I do it all the time, and juice your ginger in the Vitamix and then add fresh ginger. It's amazing. The cumin, we want kind of a level teaspoon of cumin, about half as much as the other stuff. So in this instance, because we're doing it in a food processor, we're going to go with ginger. So we're going to do the same thing. 1 heaping teaspoon of ginger, okay? Because it's always ginger, garlic, onions in the base of any Indian dish, and tomatoes. Ginger, garlic, onions, and tomatoes. So we need all those things in here. And then our spices. Now we do want this to get more liquidy than it is now, so we're going to help it along. We're going to add kefir. You can add water. The reason why we always add things like kefir is because it's lighter than oil and it already is a probiotic. It will preserve your food, help it not go bad. When you're talking about expensive ingredients like cashews, that's something you're after. And you'll notice that once I start to add it, then the spices, the yellow started to mix because it started to move it along. So I don't add the whole thing. Maximum you'll add to this is 8 ounces of water. And see how beautifully that started to blend up? And the color started to infuse through the whole basket. And I don't know if you noticed, but this part didn't get anything infused. So I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna help my turtle along, okay? And you'll notice that it really seriously is just sitting there with everything still in it. So that's when it's calling out to you, help me. So we help it. Now we always start off with less salt than we think we need because we can add, but we can't take away. So I think it's gonna need another half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, go ahead and try it. Salt. A lot more, just a little bit more. Okay. So we're gonna go with that half a teaspoon that we talked about. Like I said, I felt that it would need more salt, but you never want to start with too much. It still needs more salt. Yeah. Almost right, but not quite. So I probably needed 2 heaping teaspoons. Don't adjust any of your other seasonings until your salt is right. Your body of your whole dish changes when your salt is right. Sometimes you'll taste it and you'll say, oh, I added too much. Don't worry. When you have your salt right in a dish, that's why you're seeing me be so critical of the salt. When your salt is right, it will bring out the flavor of all the other spices. Until your salt is right, you would be making a mistake to adjust any other seasoning. So the salt is almost right in it. It's not quite right. But before, all I could taste was the turmeric. That's all I could taste. And now, I'm not tasting the turmeric like that anymore. So probably 2.5 teaspoons. Now to this, after we get the salt right, we add a touch of chipotle and we're done. Because in Indian cooking, we would have added serrano chilies. So I saved the serrano chilies for the chipotle. What we love to do with Indian dishes is top them with cilantro. It's just a nice, light taste at the very end. So we use fresh cilantro and we chop it. And the smell, can you smell as soon as I start chopping it? The cilantro will start to fill the air. If you can't smell it from over there, we'll put it in a bowl. We'll have you smell it because it's amazing. That's right, Kaylee knows. Okay, now we're ready to assemble our dish. So now we're gonna take a big bowl and we combine the sauce. This we call todka, okay? We call it todka, T-H-U-D-K-A. This part is the todka and this part is our vegetables. In Indian dishes, we must combine the todka with the vegetables. You cannot get the balance of flavor just topping it. We must combine it. So.
All of it?
No. We're just going to stop for a second. You'll add some, you'll combine it, you'll mix it up. Okay, go ahead and add some more. Good. And when all your vegetables are coated in this absolutely delicious, yummy sauce, like that, you know you have enough. So we like to do everything in a tower. So we have our tower of rice. And then we have our tower of vegetables that go on top of it. And then we sprinkle our cilantro. And that, Kyle, is our finished product. And this is a heavenly raw version of an Indian favorite. And as the seasons go on, you can change it. You can use, I love zucchini in the summertime. Zucchini with tomatoes and eggplant. Oh my goodness, don't even get me started on the eggplant. Okra, all of these things are fantastic.